Well, here I am again, talking about Epiphany Moments. And right now it looks as though I'm in a cave. I'm really not. But the idea of this backdrop is to show that when one is in the dark, um, there's a whole area, a whole world that needs exploring. But very often people prefer to be in the darkness of a Plato's cave. We talked about the allegory of the cave in my previous video, looking at shadows on the wall and missing the light. I wrote a poem many years ago when I was working on a Doctor of Ministry program. The book was called Woman Dreamer, and I wrote this about reality. And the Eliot I refer to is T.S. Eliot and his poem Murder in the Cathedral. And this is how the poem goes. Reality, Eliot would say, is too much for humankind. Now I know what he meant. When all things are in focus, sharply delineated, freed from shadows, when one's ears are unstopped and one's cataracts removed, then the knife twists in the soul, bringing deeper clarity still, like too much sun on a ski slope or intense light after anesthesia. Dark glasses lost, I perceive how others avoid my burning gaze as though afraid of what I might reveal, afraid too of the contagion that rawness brings when there is too much to bear. Reality, Eliot would say, is too much for humankind. So what do I mean by this? Whenever one ventures into speaking truth, one basically is setting oneself apart from the predominant cultural lie, whatever that happens to be, or you can make it plural, the cultural lies that everybody believes or claims to believe because it's easier to do so. And the one who speaks truth then becomes a kind of enemy of the people. And this is what the prophets did in the Hebrew scriptures and what we find prophetic witness happening in our history. When people from different cultures have got up to speak truth, very often they not only end up in the stocks or thrown down cisterns, as happened to Jeremiah, but sometimes they get put in jail or tortured or put to death by some firing squad or worse. And why is that? It's because the dominant reality does not fit the real story. And humankind cannot stand truth. And so truth gets murdered. And so the murdering of truth then is something as old as humanity. And truth speakers are very often the victims of those who have no tolerance for the light. So people can prefer to stay in the dark because it's less demanding there. As long as you're in the dark, you can be unconscious. You don't have to take a stand. You don't have to speak out. You just go along with what everybody else says and claims to be true. But as soon as you see differently and you venture up those stairs and into the light, then there's a kind of obligation that happens. Once you see, there's a need to either do something or say something. But in a way, once you're in the light, being silent is no longer an option. Instead, there's a call to see differently and speak differently and to be a disturber of the status quo, even at great personal price. So this is why so many people prefer to stay in a place of darkness, not because they are trying to save electricity, but rather because light can be blinding. And when you proclaim that something is that people do not want to see, that the emperor has no clothes on, for example, then you shake up other people's reality and they want to silence you because to admit you might be right is going to threaten their version of what is real or what they want to be real. So then, epiphany moments or moments of revelation do disturb the status quo and they shake things up. They shake up corporations, they shake up personal lives, they shake up societies, they shake up any place where people have gone along comfortably and complacently, if there's such a word, and then basically shake up a worldview, a world orientation that has existed for a while or has dominated the consciousness of the masses. So people who see differently very often tend to be artists, and the artist has a different kind of vision. The artist is one who sees beneath the surface, who makes connections, who has a very analytical way of seeing things because he or she can break things down into their component parts and see what underlies the reality. What is beneath the surface? What is the subtext? What is the picture that has yet to be revealed? What is the image that is obscuring something else? And so the artist's eye penetrates and the artist sees from different angles. And whether the artist is a visual artist or a poet or a dancer or a musician, the artist is able to somehow name and reveal that which is. And it's usually contrary to what the masses think and see. So the task of the artist, the task of the prophet, the task of the speaker of truth, the task of the one who seeks after epiphanies is to shatter the dominant consciousness and allow some new kind of consciousness to be born, something greater and more wonderful and more encompassing and more global and more cosmic than that which people have settled for in the past. So to be a speaker of truth, a facilitator of epiphanies, not only takes effort, but it takes courage, and it is necessary. The world needs epiphany moments, because without them, we're not going to evolve as a species. Without an epiphany moment, the dominant consciousness prevails, and the dominant consciousness is usually limiting. So what is called for then is a new kind of consciousness that can only be reached through the sacrifice and the truth speaking of the seers among us, that is, the seers, Seers, the seers among us are the ones who speak truth, shatter the status quo, and invite us then into a cosmic vision that goes beyond the limited reality in which we find ourselves and the limited consciousness with which we're surrounded, and which, to be quite honest, many of us succumb to much of the time. So the challenge then is to step out of that reality and embrace newness, new ways of thinking, new ways of seeing, so that others might see as well. And that is my contribution for today.